Personal reflection. Some debts get paid in ways we never expect. Back in the Arizona Territory of 1883, a man could ride for days without seeing another soul, just red dirt, cactus, and a sky that didn't forgive mistakes. This story isn't about heroism or redemption in the way you might think. It's about what happens when a single choice made in haste, almost forgotten, comes back to find you in the middle of nowhere. It's about survival, gratitude, and the strange arithmetic of mercy. For those of us who grew up hearing tales of the Old West, this one might remind you that sometimes the wilderness teaches lessons we're not ready to learn. Story begin. The sorrel gelding stumbled. Silas Wade didn't pull the reins up, his hands wouldn't move right. Everything tasted like copper and old pennies. He'd emptied the canteen yesterday morning. Or was it the day before the leather strap had left a salt ring on the saddle, white as bone? His shadow stretched 15 feet across the red dirt. A lizard crossed it. He watched it go. His hat rolled past, crown down in the sand, and he didn't reach for it. The ground came up slow. His cheek pressed against something that smelled like iron and creosote. Knees first, then ribs. The Palo Verde tree bark peeled above him, green and papery as a man's skin after sunburn. His vest pockets held nothing but lint and a broken compass. Hoofbeats, plural. His hand wouldn't reach the rifle. If you've ever traveled through country where the land seems bigger than Mercy, Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas, I'd be glad to hear where you're reading this from today. Moccasins, beadwork, red and yellow, blurred at the edges of his vision. 4 riders. They'd seen the buzzard circling from 2 miles off. This was a trading route they traveled twice each season. One dismounted, crouched. 3 fingers touched Silas's left shoulder. Not a grip, just pressure, like testing if he was real. The smell hit him, horse sweat, wood smoke, something sweet and animal he couldn't name. Silas tried to speak. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. The sound came out like gravel scraping tin. The Apache lifted his left arm, turned it over, palm up. The underside of his forearm, the old scar, white and puckered, 5 inches long, caught the last of the twilight. The Apache's thumb traced it. Once. Then he spoke to the others in words Silas couldn't follow. His voice was sharp, certain. They dismounted. One spread a blanket, not over him, under him. They rolled him onto it like a man rolls a log. His ribs screamed, but he couldn't make the sound come out. Water touched his lips. It tasted like leather and mesquite bark and something bitter. He swallowed, choked, swallowed again. They made camp, not around him. Next to him, one was younger, broader. Through the shoulders, and he kept staring. Not at Silas's face, at the scar. Coyotes started up somewhere past the rocks, high and keening. The Apaches didn't light a fire. Fever crawled up from his boots. His vision tunneled. The stars overhead fractured into pieces. Skeleton Canyon. The name surfaced like something drowned, finally floating up. 1874, 9 years. A boy. The steel trap had been half buried in sand and creosote. Silas had heard the screaming from a quarter mile off, high and animal and wrong. He thought it was a catamount. The boy's leg was caught at the calf. The trap's teeth had gone through to bone. Blood pooled black in the sand. Silas had been running. A botched robbery in Tucson, 3 dead. None by his hand, but he'd been there, and that counted. The posse was maybe an hour behind. He should have kept riding. He didn't. His knife. The trap's spring. His own arm caught when the teeth released, tearing through sleeve and skin and into muscle. The boy had stopped screaming by then. Passed out or dead, Silas couldn't tell. He'd left water, jerky, torn his shirt for bandages, then he'd ridden. The memory dissolved. The younger Apache was still staring at his forearm. Then he stood, walked closer, crouched beside Silas. He pulled up his own pant leg. A scar circled his calf. White, thick as rope. The tissue was puckered where the trap's teeth had gone deepest. Silas's vision doubled. The Apache's face split into two faces, then four, then collapsed back into one. The young man touched his own scar, then touched his chest, then pointed at Silas. The fever dragged him under like something with teeth. Light crawled across his eyelids. Gray first, then orange. His tongue wasn't stuck anymore. He swallowed. It hurt, but the motion worked. He could taste something salt, dust, the faint sweetness of whatever they'd put in the water. He opened his eyes. The Apache woman sat 3 feet away. Silver streaked through her braids, thick ones, wrapped with red cloth at the ends. Maybe 40, maybe 50. Hard to tell with the light behind her. She held something out. Dark, pressed flat. It smelled like tallow and dried meat. Pemmican. Silas pushed himself up on his elbows. His head swam, but didn't split open. Progress. He took the piece from her hand. Their fingers didn't touch. She pulled back the moment he had it. He bit into it. The taste hit his mouth buffalo, berries, something bitter like juniper. He chewed slow. His jaw ached. The woman watched him. Didn't speak. Her face gave nothing. The younger Apache, the one with the scar, sat cross-legged near the dead fire pit. His hands moved, slow, deliberate. He pointed at Silas, then at the ground, then made a motion like stopping something palm out. Fingers spread. Silas swallowed the pemmican. It stuck halfway down. He coughed, tried again. The Apache repeated the gesture, pointed at Silas, at the ground, the stopping motion. "I don't," Silas's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, spit to the side. "I don't understand." The Apache's hands moved faster, pointed at Silas's forearm, at the scar, then at his own leg, then the stopping gesture again. "Why did you stop?" The question landed in Silas's chest like a fist. "That was a long time back," he said. The Apache stared at him, waiting. Silas looked at his hands. The knuckles were swollen, nails split. Same hands that had pried open the trap, same hands that had run from Tucson with blood still wet on someone else's shirt. It was... He stopped, started again. "Hell, I don't know. Seemed right." The Apache pulled up his left pant leg. The scar circled his calf like a rope burn white, thick, puckered at the edges where the skin had healed wrong. He touched it with 2 fingers, then touched his chest, then pointed at Silas. The gesture was clear. "You did this. You saved this." Silas's stomach dropped. He looked away. His throat closed up. The Apache spoke. The words came broken, part English, part something else, part hand signs filling the gaps. "Naiche." He touched his own chest, said it again, slower. "Na-i-che." Silas tried it. His mouth was still dry. "Ne-chi. Na-i-chai." Got it. Naiche's hands moved again. He pointed to himself, made a gesture like looking hand-shading eyes, then pointed at Silas, made the gesture again. "We remember." His English was careful, uncertain. "We watch when we travel." The words settled slow. They hadn't been searching. They'd been living, moving through the desert as they always had, and they'd remembered. Kept the memory alive like coals under ash. "You remember wrong," Silas said. His voice came out rough. "I didn't do nothing worth remembering." The woman stood. She was taller than he'd thought sitting down. Her calico skirt was dark blue, worn thin at the hem. Deerskin leggings showed underneath. Her moccasins were high-topped, the soles thick, built for walking on cactus and sharp stone. She spoke. Her English was clear missionary taught, every consonant sharp, but simpler than what he'd expected. "The desert remembers," she said. "We remember." Her voice had weight to it. Not loud, just certain. Nietzsche gestured to her. "DeSoda!" She nodded once. Didn't repeat it. Silas met her eyes. They were dark and flat as river stones. "I was running from the law. Had a posse behind me. I stopped for maybe 10 minutes. Then I kept running." "You stopped," DeSoda said. "For 10 minutes?" "You bled for him." Silas looked at his forearm. The scar was pale in the morning light. The trap's teeth had gone deep down to the muscle. He'd wrapped it with his own shirt and kept riding. It had taken 2 weeks to stop bleeding through the bandage. "That wasn't—" He stopped. "What was the point?" Nietzsche stood. His limp was slight, but there, favoring the right leg. He walked to where Silas sat and crouched in front of him. His hands moved again. He pointed south, made a square shape with his fingers' walls, a gate, said a word Silas recognized. Huachuca. Fort Huachuca, 2 days' ride, maybe 3 in his condition. "We take you," DeSoda said. Silas shook his head. "I can make my own." The cough came up from his chest. Wet and thick. He spit again. Blood flecked the sand. "Own way." DeSoda's shadow fell across his face. She didn't move, just stood there looking down at him with those flat, dark eyes. "No," she said. "You cannot." The certainty in her voice left no room for argument. Silas looked at the blood in the sand, at his hands that shook when he held them still, at the empty canteen lying 3 feet from where he'd collapsed. She was right. He had nothing left to argue with. Nietzsche offered his hand. Silas took it. The grip was strong, calloused, rough as tree bark. He pulled Silas to his feet. The world tilted. Nietzsche's other hand caught his elbow, steadied him. They stood there, Silas breathing hard through his nose. Nietzsche holding his arm, DeSoda watching. "Why?" Silas said. Nietzsche didn't ask what he meant. He touched his calf again, then his chest. Then he touched Silas's chest right over the heart. 3 fingers, gentle pressure. "You kept safe," he said. His English was slower than DeSoda's. "Careful. My daughters, my wife, before they live." Silas didn't understand at first. Then the meaning settled. If Silas had kept riding, if he'd left the boy in the trap, there would be no daughters, no wife, nothing. His throat closed up again. He looked at the mountains to the south. Red rock and scrub oak and sky that went on forever. "I got nothing to give you," he said. "You gave." DeSoda said. Nietzsche released his arm, walked to where the horses stood hobbled in the shade. He pulled something from his saddlebag, small, wrapped in cloth. He came back, held it out. Silas took it. The cloth was soft deerskin, worn smooth. He unwrapped it. Inside was a piece of chain, rusted, 3 links, a chunk of steel still attached to one end. The bear trap. "I carry," Nietzsche said. "To remember pain can end." Silas stared at the metal in his palm. The rust flaked off on his skin. His hand started shaking again. Nietzsche wrapped the deerskin back around it, pressed it into Silas's hand, closed his fingers over it. "Keep," he said. "Why?" Nietzsche looked at him for a long moment. Then he said something in Apache. DeSoda spoke. "So you remember you are not only the man who runs." By mid-morning, Silas could sit a horse again. Barely. His legs shook when he swung up into the saddle and his vision grayed at the edges, but he stayed upright. That was something. Nietzsche rode to his left. Close enough that if Silas started to slide, the younger man could catch him. Not so close it looked like pity. The other 3 Apaches, DeSoda, and 2 men Silas hadn't been introduced to, rode in a loose formation. 1 ahead, 2 behind, not guarding him, guarding for him. The land rolled past in the waves of red and brown. Saguaro stood like sentries. The sun climbed and pressed down on his shoulders like hands. His sorrel gelding followed Nietzsche's paint without guidance. Silas let the reins go slack across the saddle horn. His hands didn't work right yet. The fingers on his left hand kept cramping. They rode through country Silas didn't know. Canyon walls rose on both sides, striped orange and cream and rust. The horses' hooves echoed off stone. A hawk circled overhead, wings spread wide, riding thermals. Nightshade finally stopped where the canyon widened into a bowl. Limestone overhang on the north side, deep shade. He dismounted, waited. Silas slid down. His knees buckled. He caught himself on the stirrup leather, stood there breathing hard until his legs decided to hold. Nightshade gestured to the shade. Silas walked to it, sat with his back against stone that still held the morning's coolness. The rock smelled like dust and something mineral. Nightshade sat cross-legged 3 feet away. He reached into a leather pouch at his belt, pulled out something wrapped in corn husk. Tobacco. He unwrapped it, took a pinch, held the pouch out to Silas. Silas pulled his own tobacco tin from his vest pocket, Bull Durham, down to the last few shreds. He shook it. The sound was hollow. Got my own. Nightshade kept holding the pouch out, waiting. It was an offer. Maybe more than that. Silas took a pinch of the Apache tobacco. It was darker than Bull Durham. Smelled like cedar and something sweet he couldn't place. He rolled it in a scrap of corn husk Nightshade handed him. His fingers fumbled, but he got it done. Nightshade rolled his own, struck a match off a rock, lit Silas's first, then his own. They smoked. The tobacco was stronger than what Silas was used to. It hit the back of his throat and stayed there. He didn't cough. DeSoto and the other two made camp without speaking. One gathered dried mesquite, the other arranged stones for a fire pit. DeSoto pulled pemmican and something else dried corn, maybe from a pack. You got kids, Silas said. Nightshade looked at him, nodded once. How many? Nightshade held up 2 fingers. Girls. How old? Nightshade counted on his fingers, spoke in Apache first, then tried English. 7 summer, 5 summer, 7 and 5. Old enough to lose a father and remember it. Silas drew on the cigarette. The smoke burned down into his chest. They safe? Yes. Your wife? Yes. The word came out flat, final. Not angry. Just certain. They sat in silence. Smoke drifted up and disappeared in the heat shimmer. That trap, Silas said. Skeleton Canyon. What were you doing there? Nightshade's jaw tightened. He looked at the mountains to the east. Hunting. By yourself. Nightshade nodded. 15, summer old. Thought I man. He said it without bitterness. Just fact. You remember much, Silas said. I remember pain. Nightshade touched his leg. I remember scream. You passed out. Yes. Then wake. You gone. My leg. He gestured, made a rapping motion. Water. Food. Wasn't much. Was enough. Nightshade turned to look at him full on. Why you come back? I didn't come back. I was passing through. Before. Why you stop? Silas flicked ash into the sand. The cigarette was half gone. He watched the ember eat through the corn husk. Heard you screamin', he said. Thought you was a catamount. But you stop? Yeah. You have posse behind. Silas's head came up. How'd you know that? I hear horses. After you gone, many horses. They not find me. Nightshade drew on his cigarette. You lead away. I was running from them anyway. But you stop first. Silas looked at his hands. The scar on his left forearm was white against sun-dark skin. The trap's teeth had gone deep. He thought he'd lose the arm. Infection set in 2 days later. He'd burned it out with a hot knife blade and whiskey. The fever had taken him for a week. You were dying, he said. Yes. Couldn't just leave you. Why? The question sat there between them, honest, not accusatory, just asking. Silas didn't have an answer that made sense. He'd left men before, left them bleeding in the dirt after botched robberies, left them to hang while he rode for the border. He'd done plenty of leaving. "I don't know," he said finally. Nietzsche nodded like that was the right answer. "I used my knife," Silas said. "Pried the trap open. Spring was stiff. Caught my arm when it let go." He held up his forearm, showed the scar. Nietzsche leaned forward, studied it, touched it with 2 fingers. The touch was light, careful. "You bleed for me. Wasn't much blood. You bleed for me," Nietzsche said again, firmer this time. "Stranger. You were a kid. I Apache. You white. We enemy. You weren't my enemy. You were just a kid caught in a trap." Nietzsche sat back, drew on the cigarette until it burned down to nothing. He crushed the ember between his fingers. Didn't flinch. "I tell my father," he said. "When I get home, tell him white man saved me. What did he say? He not believe." Nietzsche looked at the mountains again. "He say, white men not stop. They take, they kill, they leave." He was right most of the time. Yes. Nietzsche turned back to him. But not that time. Silas finished his cigarette, ground it into the sand. His hands had stopped shaking. That was something. "Your father's still alive?" he asked. Nietzsche's face went blank. "No, cavalry. 5 years ago. I'm sorry. He die fighting." Nietzsche said it like that made it better. Maybe it did. "My mother, too. Same day. That when you started trackin', yes, army pay, family eat." Silas understood that arithmetic. A man did what he had to. "You track your own people," he said. Nietzsche didn't answer right away. He pulled a leather pouch from his belt, different from the tobacco pouch, smaller. He held it in his palm. "I track raiders," he said finally. "Men who kill settlers, burn ranches." He looked at the pouch. "I not track families. I not track women. Children." He paused. "Army not always listen, but they pay." He opened the pouch, tipped something into his palm. The piece of trap chain. 3 links. Rusted. A chunk of steel still bolted to one end, but there was more. A turquoise bead the size of a pea. A hawk feather. A bundle of dried sage wrapped with red thread. "I make this," Nietzsche said. "After I heal, I carry always." He wrapped the items back in red cloth, tied it with sinew, held it out to Silas. "For you." Silas didn't take it. "Can't accept that." "You must. It's yours. Was mine." Nietzsche pushed it into Silas's hand, closed his fingers around it. "Now, yours." The bundle was warm from Nietzsche's palm, light. It smelled like sage and leather and something else, sweet grass. Maybe. "What's it for?" Silas said. "Protection." "From what?" Nietzsche smiled. It was the first time Silas had seen him smile. It changed his face, made him look younger. "From forget," he said. De Soto called something from the fire. Nietzsche stood, offered his hand, pulled Silas to his feet. They walked to where the others waited. The fire crackled. Smoke rose straight up in the still air. Something was roasting rabbit, from the smell. Silas sat, held the medicine bundle in his palm. The turquoise bead caught the light through the red cloth. "What I supposed to remember," he said. Nietzsche crouched across the fire from him. The flames lit his face from below, cast shadows in the hollows of his cheeks. "That you bleed for me," he said. "That you stop running. Once." Silas looked at the bundle, at his scarred forearm, at Nietzsche's leg where the white rope of scar tissue disappeared under his pant leg. "What if I can't stop again?" he said. Nietzsche poked the fire with a stick. Sparks lifted and died in the smoke. "Then you remember that you did once," he said. "Maybe that enough." The rabbit fat dripped into the flames. The smell made Silas's stomach clench. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten real meat, DeSoto handed him a portion. He took it. The meat burned his fingers, but he didn't put it down. He bit into it. The taste flooded his mouth, smoke and salt and something wild. He chewed slow, swallowed. His throat worked, but it went down. Nietzsche watched him eat, waited until he'd finished the first piece. Then he said, "Tomorrow we reach Fort Huachuca." Yes. Silas wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Grease shined on his skin. "You comin' in with me?" he asked. Nietzsche shook his head. "Apache not welcome at fort. Only scouts. I not scout for them anymore." "Why not?" Nietzsche looked at DeSoto. She was staring into the fire. Her face gave nothing away, but her hands were tight on the stick she held. "They ask me find my people," Nietzsche said quietly. "My cousins. Wife, family." He paused. "I not do." The fire popped. A log shifted. Sparks scattered across the sand. "So, what are you doing?" Silas said. "Surviving." The word hung there, heavy, final. Silas looked at the medicine bundle still clutched in his hand, at the piece of trap chain wrapped inside, at the blood he'd spilled 9 years ago to free a boy he'd never thought he'd see again. "What about your daughters?" he said. Nietzsche's face closed. "They safe. For now." "Where?" Nietzsche didn't answer. The fire crackled between them. DeSoto stood and walked to where the horses were hobbled. The 2 other men followed. Their voices were low, urgent. Silas tucked the medicine bundle into his vest pocket. The weight of it pressed against his ribs. "Nietzsche," he said. The younger man looked at him. "That day in Skeleton Canyon." Silas stopped. Started again. "I wasn't looking to save nobody. I was just trying to outrun the law." "I know. So why'd you remember me for 9 years?" Nietzsche fed another stick to the fire, watched it catch. "Debt not paid is dishonor," he said. "I don't want your debt." "Too late." Nietzsche smiled again, that same change in his face. "You have." One of the other men called out, sharp, alarmed. Nietzsche was on his feet before Silas could move. His hand went to the knife at his belt. DeSoto pointed west, toward a ridgeline maybe half a mile off. Riders, 4 of them, maybe 5, silhouetted against the sunset. Too far to out details. But the shape of them, the way they sat their horses, was wrong. "Cavalry," Silas said. Nietzsche shook his head. His jaw was tight. "Worse." The riders didn't come closer. They sat their horses on the ridgeline for maybe 10 minutes, long enough for the light to change from orange to deep red, then turned north and disappeared over the rise. Nietzsche didn't move until they were gone. His hand stayed on the knife at his belt. When he finally let go, his knuckles were white. "Who were they?" Silas asked. "Raiders, maybe, or prospectors." Nietzsche's voice was tight. "Hard to tell from here." DeSoto spoke in Apache. Fast and low, Nietzsche answered. They went back and forth like that, her voice rising, his staying level. The other 2 men watched the ridgeline. Didn't join in. Finally, DeSoto turned away, walked to the fire, sat. "We stay here tonight," Nietzsche said. "They might come back. If they do, we see them first." He gestured to the rock outcropping behind them. "This good place." Silas looked at the ridge where the riders had been. The sky was purple now, stars starting to push through. His chest felt tight, but he couldn't tell if it was fear or just the lingering weakness from the desert. "You know them?" he asked. "No." "But you know what they are?" Nietzsche crouched by the fire, poked at the coals with a stick. "I know what they might be." That wasn't an answer, but Silas let it go. He sat. His legs were done. They'd been done an hour ago, but the riders had pushed the exhaustion back. Now it came flooding in. The fire burned down to embers. DeSoto added more mesquite. The wood caught quick dry as powder. Flames climbed and the heat pressed against Silas's face. The other two men Silas still didn't know their names made beds on the far side of the camp, rolled into blankets without speaking. One of them started snoring within minutes. DeSoto stayed by the fire. She pulled something from a pouch at her waist. A piece of cloth. Dark. She unfolded it across her lap, smoothed it with both hands. It was a shirt, child-sized. The fabric was worn thin in places, faded from washing. There was a hole in the sleeve, carefully mended with thread that didn't quite match. She traced the stitching with one finger. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Silas looked away. This wasn't meant for him, but Nietzsche didn't look away. He watched his Aunt Silas, figured that's what she was from the way Nietzsche had spoken to her, and his face didn't change, but something in his shoulders went soft. "My son," DeSoto said. She said it in English, clear and flat. 5 years now. Silas's hands tightened on his knees. He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if he was supposed to say anything. How old was he? The words came out before he could stop them. 12 summer. Same age as Silas's throat closed up. He coughed to clear it. Didn't work. Cavalry, he asked. Yes. She folded the shirt. Careful, precise, each fold the same width. They come at dawn. We camp near San Pedro River. We do nothing. Steal nothing, kill no one. She smoothed the folded shirt on her lap. They come anyway. Nietzsche was staring at the fire now. His jaw worked, but he didn't speak. My son bring water from river. DeSoto said. He have 2 buckets, heavy. He walk slow. She paused. The fire popped. Sparks lifted. They shoot him first. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Silas's hands started shaking again. He pressed them flat against his thighs. I'm sorry. Why? DeSoto looked at him. Her eyes caught the firelight. You not kill him? No, but He stopped. What could he say? That he was sorry the world was like this, that he was sorry men with guns rode down children carrying water, that he was sorry for every damned thing that had ever happened. I had brother, he said instead. The words came out rough, like something dredged up from deep water. DeSoto waited. Younger brother? Robert? He 12 when he died? Silas looked at his hands. They were still shaking. Cholera. 1861. During war. You with him? No. The word tasted like ash. I supposed to be my ma told me watch him. Make sure he drink clean water. Boiled first. He rubbed his face. His beard was thick with dust. I went play cards instead. Penny ante game behind livery. I-17. Thought I man. DeSoto refolded the shirt. Same way. Same careful creases. When I got home, he already sick, Silas said. Fever so high he didn't know me. He lasted 3 days. He looked at the fire, easier than looking at her. He called for me. My ma said, at end, called my name. You not there. No. You carry this. It wasn't a question. Silas nodded anyway. DeSoto set the shirt aside. She stood, walked around the fire, sat next to Silas close enough he could smell the sage smoke in her hair. How long you carry him? She asked. 22 years. That long enough? Silas's chest cracked open. The sound that came out wasn't quite a laugh. Don't work that way. It does if you can't just let go. No? She touched his shoulder. Light. The same way Nietzsche had touched him in the desert. But you can carry him alone. Silas looked at her. Her face was lined deep at the corners of her eyes. Mouth, forehead, lines from sun and grief and years of squinting at horizons. I don't know what that means, he said. She placed her hand on top of his head, not his shoulder, his head, palm flat against his scalp. Her skin was cool and rough and smelled like sage and something else, sweetgrass maybe. She spoke in Apache, low and rhythmic. It sounded like a prayer, or a blessing, or both. When she finished, she switched to English. "You carry him every day since he die? This enough. He say it enough." Silas's eyes burned. He closed them. The pressure of her hand was steady, grounding. "I don't deserve," he started. "Deserve has nothing." Her voice was firm, not harsh, just certain. "You tired. Rest, not weakness." She lifted her hand. The absence of it felt like cold air on wet skin. Silas opened his eyes. DeSoto was watching him with that same flat, dark stare. "You save my sister's son," she said. "Naichi, he my blood, that make you blood. I'm not. We call K," she pronounced it carefully, "kinship, not from birth, from choice, from action. I didn't choose nothing. I just stopped. You choose to stop. You choose to bleed. You choose to stay long enough free him." She picked up the folded shirt, held it against her chest. "Those were choices." Naichi spoke from across the fire. "She right." Silas looked at him. The younger man's face was half in shadow. "You shichai now." Naichi said, "Grandfather, I got no right to that." "Desert gave you right." DeSoto's voice had edges now. "We not argue with desert." Silas started to speak. Stopped. Nothing he said would change their minds. He could see that. It was already decided. "You're banned," he said instead. "Where they?" DeSoto's face went still. She looked at the folded shirt in her hands. Gone. Dead. Scattered. "San Carlos. Some, yes." She said it like the name was a curse. Maybe it was. Others dead. Others hiding. Hiding. Where? She didn't answer. Naichi leaned forward. His face came into the light. "We what left," he said. "5 of us, sometimes 6 when my uncle find us. 5. Silas looked around the camp. Counted. 4 here. "Who the 5th? "My wife. Daughters." "Where they?" Naichi's jaw tightened. "Safe." "That's not answer." "Is only answer I give." "Fair enough." Silas would have done the same. "You can't run forever," he said. "No." Naichi fed the fire. "But we run long enough." "Long enough for what?" "For daughters grow. Remember who they are." He looked at DeSoto. "Remember our mother stories." DeSoto nodded. She started to refold the shirt again. Her hands moved without thinking. Muscle memory worn deep. "Army want me track families," Naichi said. His voice was quiet, level. But something underneath it was sharp. "Women. Children. They want me find them and bring them San Carlos. Will you?" "No." "They'll stop paying you." "Yes." "Then what?" Naichi shrugged. "We survive. This what we do." DeSoto looked up from the shirt. "This also courage. Survive when world wants you disappear." Silas thought about that. About running for 22 years. About surviving one day after another with nothing but guilt and dust and the taste of copper in his mouth. "Don't feel like courage?" he said. "It never does." DeSoto said. The fire burned low. The wood had gone to coals red and pulsing like a heartbeat. The stars were full out now, thick as spilled salt. DeSoto pointed up. "There. You see." Silas followed her finger. She was pointing at a cluster of stars. 7 of them. Maybe 8. "Pleiades," he said. "We call 7 sisters." She traced the pattern with her hand. "They watch over the travelers. Keep safe in dark." "You believe that?" "I believe stars not lie. Men lie. Desert lies. But stars." She dropped her hand. "Stars only watch." Naichi stood, stretched. His back popped. "You should sleep," he said to Silas. "Tomorrow we ride early." "How far to Fort?" "If we leave at dawn by midday." Silas nodded. His body was already halfway to sleep. heavy and loose. DeSoto handed him a blanket. Wool. Scratchy. It smelled like horse and smoke. "Thank you," he said. She touched his head again. Brief. Just her fingertips. "Welcome. Shichai." The word still didn't fit right, but Silas didn't argue. He lay down near the fire, rolled the blanket around himself. The ground was hard and his hip bones pressed into the dirt, but it didn't matter. He was asleep before he could think about it. He dreamed of water, clean water in a wooden bucket, his brother's hands on the handle. The fever hadn't taken him yet. He was still whole, still alive. He looked at Silas and smiled. "You came back," Robert said. "I'm sorry," Silas said. "I should have been there." "You're here now." The dream shifted. The bucket was gone. Robert was gone. DeSoto stood in his place. She was holding the folded shirt. "He forgives you," she said. "How do you know?" "Because the dead not hold grudges. Only the living do." Silas woke to gray light and the smell of coffee. His mouth was dry. His head ached. But something in his chest felt looser than it had in years. Nietzsche crouched by the fire. He held out a tin cup. Steam rose from it. Silas sat up, took the cup. The metal was hot. He didn't care, he drank. The coffee was bitter and strong and tasted like burnt mesquite. Best thing he'd had in months. "The riders?" he asked. "Gone. Headed north." "You sure?" "I'd check at first light." Nietzsche poured himself a cup, added something from a small jar honey, dark and thick. "We leave soon." DeSoto was rolling up blankets. The other two men were already saddling horses. Silas finished the coffee. Set the cup down. His hands were steady, for the first time in 22 years. They were steady. He stood. Walked to where his sorrel was hobbled. The horse lifted its head, blew through its nostrils. Silas ran a hand down its neck. The gelding's coat was rough with dust, but the animal was stronger than it had been 3 days ago. Fed, rested. Maybe they both were. He saddled the horse. His fingers remembered the motions. Cinch, breast collar, bridle. The leather was dry and cracked, but it held. Nietzsche swung up onto his paint. Waited. Silas mounted. His legs protested, but they held. He settled into the saddle, felt the medicine bundle press against his ribs through his vest pocket. They rode south. The sun climbed behind them, cast their shadows long across the red dirt. By noon, the fort would be visible. By afternoon, he'd be inside its walls. And then what? He didn't know. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, that question didn't feel like drowning. They crested a rise. The land opened up below them flat and wide and empty except for saguaro and creosote and one thing that made Silas's breath stop. A dust cloud. Rising fast. Coming from the east. Riders. More than 5 this time. Coming straight at them. Naichi's hand went up, fist closed. The signal was clear. Everyone stopped. The dust cloud grew. Silas counted the shapes inside it 6 riders. Maybe 7. Too many to be prospectors. The formation was wrong for cavalry. They rode loose, spread out. "Down," Nietzsche said. They dismounted, led the horses behind a stand of scrub oak on the east side of the rise. The trees weren't much twisted and low, but they broke up the shapes, made them harder to see from a distance. Silas's sorrel snorted. He put his hand over the gelding's nostrils, pressed firm. The horse stilled. Nietzsche crouched at the edge of the rise, watched. DeSoto moved up beside him. The other 2 Apaches stayed with the horses. One had his hand on a knife, the other held a rifle, old Springfield. Single shot. The riders came on, a quarter mile now, close enough to see details. They were white, rough-dressed, hats pulled low. One had a bandana tied across his face. Another wore a duster despite the heat. The rest were in vests and shirt sleeves. All of them carried rifles across their saddles. Not prospectors. Raiders, DeSoto said. Her voice was flat. Nietzsche didn't answer. His jaw was tight. The riders slowed. One pointed toward the rise where Silas and the others had been moments before. They turned, started up the slope. Silas's hand moved toward his Henry rifle. Stopped. Nietzsche was watching him. Shook his head once. Wait. The riders crested the rise. Stopped where Silas's group had been. One dismounted, crouched, studied the ground. He was maybe 30 yards away. Close enough Silas could see his beard was red, his nose sunburned and peeling. The man touched the dirt, rubbed it between his fingers, stood. Said something to the others. His voice carried, but the words didn't. Another rider dismounted. This one was tall, thin as a rail. He walked in a slow circle, bent down, picked something up. Silas's tobacco tin. He'd dropped it that morning. Forgotten it. The tall man opened it, sniffed, closed it, held it up. The red-bearded man took it, examined it, threw it on the ground. They mounted, sat there, talking. One pointed south, another shook his head, pointed east. Silas's chest was tight. His breath wanted to come fast, but he kept it slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way his father had taught him before a hunt. Stay still. Let them leave. The red-bearded man spurred his horse, rode in a circle, wide, searching. He was coming toward the scrub oak. Nietzsche's hand went to his knife. Slow, silent. The blade slid free without sound. The Apache with the Springfield eased the hammer back. The click was loud in Silas's ears, too loud, but the riders didn't hear it. The wind was wrong. Blowing from them toward Silas's group. The red-bearded man rode closer. 20 yards, 15. Silas could see his eyes now. Blue, pale. His horse was a bay gelding with a white blaze. Good horse. Well-fed. 10 yards. The bay's ears pricked forward. It had caught their scent. The horse's head turned toward the scrub oak. Nostrils flared. The red-bearded man saw it, started to reach for his rifle. A jackrabbit bolted from the brush to Silas's left, ran flat out across the open ground, zigzagging. The bay shied. The red-bearded man grabbed for the saddle horn, caught himself, cursed. The other riders laughed. One said something Silas couldn't make out. The red-bearded man's face went darker. He spat, jerked the reins, rode back to the others. They sat there for another minute. Then the tall one pointed south again, said something. The others nodded. They turned their horses, rode down the far side of the rise. The dust cloud moved with them, south and west, away. Nobody moved. Silas counted to 100. Slow. When he got to 70, his hands started shaking. By 100, his whole body was doing it. Nietzsche stood. Watched the horizon where the riders had disappeared. Waited another 5 minutes. Then he whistled, low, 2 notes. The Apaches with the horses brought them up. "We ride east now," Nietzsche said. "Away from them." "Fort Huachuca South," Silas said. "Yes, we circle back tonight. Go through canyon country. That'll add a day. Better than dead." Silas couldn't argue with that. They mounted, rode east, fast at first. Then Nietzsche slowed them to a walk, trying to raise less dust. The land rose into broken country, red rock and dry washes and stands of juniper that smelled like gin. The sun hammered down. Silas's shirt stuck to his back. By late afternoon they were deep in canyon country. The walls rose on both sides striped red and orange and cream. The floor was sand and gravel, and the hoofbeats echoed. Nietzsche stopped at a place where the canyon widened. A limestone overhang jutted out from the north wall, shade underneath, deep and cool. "We camp here," he said. They unsaddled, hobbled the horses, made no fire, ate pemmican, and drank water that tasted like leather. The sun dropped behind the canyon rim. The temperature fell with it. Silas wrapped his blanket around his shoulders. His body ached in places he'd forgotten about. DeSoda sat against the canyon wall. She was singing, soft, wordless, the same tune from last night. Her eyes were closed. Naichi cleaned his knife, slow, methodical. The blade caught the last of the light. Silas's eyes were heavy. He let them close. Just for a minute, a scream woke him. High. Piercing. It echoed off the canyon walls and came back doubled. The horses went wild, pulling against their hobbles, eyes rolling white. Silas's hand found his rifle. He was on his feet before he was fully awake. His heart slammed against his ribs. "Hold!" Naichi's voice, calm. "Not move." Silas froze. The scream came again, closer this time. It sounded like a woman dying, or a child, but it wasn't either. Mountain lion. Silas's finger found the trigger. His thumb pulled the hammer back. The click was loud. "No!" Naichi was beside him, hand on the rifle barrel, pushing it down. "Wait! It'll spook the horses." "Horses already spooked. Shooting make worse." "It might come for us. It might, if we act like prey." The cougar screamed again. The sound came from above. On the canyon rim, maybe. Or closer. Hard to tell with the echoes. Silas's hands were slick with sweat. The rifle barrel was cold under his palms. Yellow eyes appeared at the edge of the camp. Low to the ground, 30 feet away. The cougar was big, female from the size. Her tail twitched. Her ears were flat. Her muscles tensed. Released. Testing. Naichi gestured. Slow. Sit. Silas didn't move. Naichi's hand tightened on the rifle barrel. His eyes didn't leave the cougar. Sit. Now. Silas sat, his legs folded under him. He kept the rifle across his lap. Finger still on the trigger. The cougar paced, left to right to left. Her paws made no sound on the sand. DeSoda sat perfectly still. Her hands were folded in her lap. She was watching the cougar, but her face showed nothing. The other two Apaches had their weapons ready, but they weren't aiming. Just holding. Waiting. The cougar circled the camp. Wide, her head was level with her shoulders, testing the edges. She looked at Silas, directly at him. Her eyes didn't blink. His finger tightened on the trigger. One shot, center mass. She'd be dead before she hit the ground. Naichi's hand covered his. Gentle. Firm. "No. I can end this. You not have to." The words settled in Silas's chest, heavy. You not have to. How many times had he ended things because he could, because it was easier than waiting, faster than thinking? He took his finger off the trigger, let the hammer down slow, set the rifle on the ground beside him. The cougar watched. Her tail stopped twitching. She came closer, 20 feet now, 15. Her nose worked, scenting them. Silas's hands were shaking again, worse than before. He pressed them against his thighs, but it didn't help. The minutes stretched. Each one felt like an hour. Silas counted his breaths, lost count, started over. The cougar sat, then lay down, her head on her paws. She was still watching, but something in her posture had changed. The tension had gone out of her shoulders. She stood, stretched, walked to the edge of the firelight, looked back once, then she was gone. The silence after was thick. Absolute. Silas's hands were shaking so hard now he couldn't stop them. He pressed them against his thighs, against the ground. Nothing worked. Naichi took the rifle, checked it, set it against the canyon wall, out of reach. "You not need this," he said. "Not here." She could have killed us. She could. She not. Why not? Naichi sat beside him. Because we not act like prey. I wanted to shoot her. I know. Would have been easy. Yes. Naichi paused. Kill always easy. Silas looked at his hands. They were still shaking. Then why didn't I? Because you choose not. The words were simple. Too simple. But Silas felt them anyway. Felt the weight of them. He'd spent 22 years running. Running from the law. Running from guilt. Running from himself. And all that running had been about one thing. Fear. Fear that if he stopped, if he stood still, something would catch him. Something would end him. But tonight he'd stopped. He'd waited. And nothing had ended. What was she? Silas asked. His voice came out rough. Mother. Looking for food for young. How do you know? Naichi pointed at the ground, at the tracks the cougar had left. Her teeth swollen, she nursing. So she was desperate. Yes, but we patient. Naichi stood, offered his hand. That enough? Silas took it, let Naichi pull him to his feet. His legs were numb. He stamped to get the blood moving. DeSoto added wood to the fire. Not much, just enough to push back the dark. The flames climbed and the heat felt good. She pulled something from her pack. A jar, dark glass. She opened it. The smell hit Silas sweet and thick and familiar. Honey. She added it to the last of the coffee, stirred it with a twig, handed the cup to Silas. He drank. The honey cut the bitterness, made it almost good. Why didn't you let me shoot her? He asked. DeSoto looked at the canyon rim, at the stars overhead. Because she not our enemy. She only hungry. She might have killed us. Many things might kill us. We not kill them all. She said it like it was obvious. Maybe it was. Silas finished the coffee. His hands had stopped shaking. His chest felt loose again. Not light, he didn't think he'd ever feel light, but not crushing either. Mountain lion sacred, DeSoto said. They can change shape, become human, become wind. She looked at him. They test us. See if we worthy. Worthy of what? Of living in their world. Silas thought about that, about worthiness, about tests he'd passed and tests he'd failed and the ones he'd never even tried. You think I passed? He asked. DeSoto smiled. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. It changed her face completely, made her look younger, almost peaceful. You not shoot, she said. That enough? She started singing again. That same wordless tune. It floated up and echoed off the canyon walls. Silas lay down, pulled the blanket over himself. The medicine bundle pressed against his ribs. He could feel each item inside it, the trap chain, the turquoise bead, the hawk feather. Objects that meant nothing to anyone else. Everything to him. His eyes closed. Sleep came easy this time, no dreams, just darkness and the sound of DeSoto's voice and the knowledge that he'd chosen something different. He'd chosen to wait instead of act, to trust instead of fear. Maybe that was what Naichi had been trying to tell him all along. Maybe that was what the desert had been trying to teach him. He woke to gray light and the smell of smoke. His body was stiff, but the ache was familiar now, manageable. Nietzsche was already up. He stood at the canyon entrance, looking south. Silas walked over. The fort? Yes, we reach by noon if we leave now. And then, Nietzsche didn't answer right away. He looked at the canyon walls, at the sky turning from gray to pink to gold. And then you choose, he said finally. Choose what? What kind man you be? Before Silas could respond, DeSoto called out, sharp, urgent. She was pointing at something scratched into the canyon wall. Fresh. The limestone was still white where someone had carved into it. Words in English. Rough but readable. Apaches seen here, hunt them down. $50 reward, dead or alive. The air changed. Silas felt it before he saw it, pressure dropping. The heat suddenly heavy and wet instead of dry. Nietzsche looked at the sky. Clouds were building to the west. Dark, purple-bellied, moving fast. "Monsoon," DeSoto said. The message on the canyon wall stared at them. White scratches in limestone. Fresh, maybe a day old, maybe less. $50 reward, dead or alive. Silas's stomach turned over. $50 was a month's wages. 2 months for some men. Enough to make decent people do indecent things. "We need to move," one of the other Apaches said. The first words Silas had heard him speak. His English was broken but clear. "Now." Nietzsche shook his head. "Storm coming. We ride into it. We die. We stay. They find us. The storm will wash our tracks. It will also trap us." Thunder rolled. Still distant but coming closer. The sound echoed off the canyon walls and multiplied. "We stay," Nietzsche said. His voice had edges now. Final. "Take the horses deeper into the canyon. Find shelter." They moved fast. The wind picked up hot and pushing. It smelled like rain and copper and creosote. The canyon narrowed. The walls closed in until Silas could touch both sides with his arms spread. Then it opened again into a bowl maybe 30 yards across. Limestone overhang on the north side. Deep. Wide enough for all of them and the horses. They led the animals under, tied them to scrub oak growing out of cracks in the rock. The horses' ears were flat. They knew what was coming. The first drops hit, fat, warm. They exploded on the rocks and raised dust. Then the sky opened. Rain came down in sheets. Solid. Silas couldn't see 10 feet past the overhang. The canyon floor turned to mud in seconds. Water poured off the rim above 50 feet up and hit the ground like hammers. Lightning cracked. The flash turned everything white. Thunder followed so close Silas felt it in his chest. The horses screamed. Pulled against their ropes. DeSoto moved to calm them. Hands on their necks. Voice low, steady. Silas sat with his back against the limestone. The rock was cool. Wet where rain blew in sideways. His shirt stuck to his skin. Nietzsche crouched at the edge of the shelter, watching the storm. His face was tight. "How long?" Silas asked. "Hours, maybe all night. And if those men come back, they will not ride in this." "You sure?" Nietzsche turned to look at him. Water ran down his face. His eyes were flat. "No." The honesty of it hit Silas harder than the thunder. No false comfort, no lies, just the truth sitting there between them. They were trapped. And if the men who'd carved that message came back, if they had shelter nearby, if they decided $50 was worth getting wet, Nietzsche and his people would die. Silas's hands started shaking again. He pressed them against his knees. It didn't help. "This is my fault," he said. Nietzsche didn't answer. "I dropped the tobacco tin." "They found it. They know someone was here. They already knew. The message was here before we arrived. But they're looking now, because of me. They are always looking." Nietzsche's voice was tired, old. "We are always running." Silas stood, walked to the edge of the overhang. Rain hammered the ground 3 feet in front of him. The noise was deafening. He stepped out into it. The water hit him like fists. Cold now. It soaked through his hat, his shirt, his pants in seconds, ran into his boots. He kept walking. "What are you doing?" Nietzsche's voice behind him. Sharp. Silas didn't answer. He walked to the center of the bowl, knelt in the mud. Rainwater poured over his head, down his face, into his mouth. He could taste it clean and bitter and alive. Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked, so loud his ears rang. He'd spent 22 years running from the law, running from guilt, running from the image of his brother calling his name while fever burned him alive. 22 years of saloons and card games and waking up in ditches with no memory of how he'd got there. And for what? So he could lead good people, people who'd saved his life, who'd called him grandfather, into danger. So he could bring bounty hunters down on a man who'd done nothing but try to survive, on a woman who'd already lost her son, on 2 little girls who'd never hurt anyone. He'd stopped running 9 years ago, for 10 minutes, long enough to free a boy from a trap, and now that boy might die because Silas had been too careless to pick up his tobacco tin. His throat closed. The sound that came out was somewhere between a cough and something worse. He pressed his fists into the mud, felt it ooze between his fingers, footsteps behind him, Naichi's hand on his shoulder. "Get up," Naichi said. Silas shook his head. Water ran off his hat brim in streams. "I don't know how," he said. His voice cracked. "I don't know how to be anything else." "You are already something else." "No." Silas looked at his hands, black with mud, shaking. "I'm still the same, still running, still getting people killed. My brother is dead because of me." The words came out hard, forcing their way through his teeth. "I was playing cards. He was dying. He called for me and I wasn't there." Rain pounded his back, his shoulders. He felt each drop like an accusation. "The men I rode with." He stopped. Started again. "3 of them are dead, 2 hanged, 1 shot by a sheriff in Yuma, the rest are in prison. Only reason I'm not is because I ran faster." "You were young," Naichi said. "I was old enough to know better." Silas's voice was rising now, competing with the thunder. "I knew what we were doing. I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway because I didn't know what else to do." He slammed his fist into the mud. Once, twice. The 3rd time his knuckles hit rock underneath and split open, blood mixed with rainwater. Ran pink through the mud. "I saved you because I didn't know how not to," he said. "That's all it was? I heard you screaming and my body moved before my brain caught up. That's not courage. That's not redemption. That's just—" He stopped. Couldn't find the word. "Instinct," Naichi said. "Yeah. And now my instinct is to run again. Leave you here. Get to the fort. Save myself." His chest was heaving. "That's who I am. That's who I've always been." Naichi crouched beside him. The rain hit them both, soaked them both, made them both small against the storm. "You have not run," Naichi said. "I'm thinking about it. But you have not done it." Silas looked at him. Water ran down Naichi's face, into his eyes. He didn't blink it away. "What if I do?" Silas said. "What if I wake up tomorrow and I'm the same man I was yesterday? Then you will choose again. And if I choose wrong, then you will choose again." The simplicity of it was unbearable. Like Naichi thought choices were easy. Like a man could just decide to be better, and it would happen. Silas had been deciding to be better for 22 years. It hadn't worked yet. "I don't deserve—" he started. "This is not about deserve." DeSoto's voice. She was standing at the edge of the overhang. Rain made a curtain between them. "This is about what you do next." "I don't know what to do next." "Then do nothing. Sit in the rain. Let it wash you. Then stand up." "And then what?" "And then you will know." Lightning flashed. The canyon walls turned white. In that moment, Silas saw everything. Naichi crouched beside him, DeSoto standing in the shelter, the horses pulling at their ropes, the water pouring down from above. Thunder crashed. The sound rolled through him, shook his bones. He was 47 years old. He had $4.37. He had a broken compass and a rusted Henry rifle and a medicine bundle he didn't deserve. He had a scar on his arm from freeing a boy he'd never thought he'd see again. He had nothing. He was nothing, except Naichi was still beside him, still waiting, still choosing to stay. "Why?" Silas said. The word barely made it past his throat. Why do you stay with me? Because you bled for me once. Naichi touched Silas's scarred forearm. His fingers were cold, steady. Because blood calls to blood. That ain't enough? It is all we have. Naichi stood, offered his hand. And it is enough. Silas looked at the offered hand, at his own covered in mud and blood and 22 years of mistakes. He took it. Naichi pulled him to his feet. Silas's legs shook but held. They walked back to the overhang. DeSoto handed him a blanket. Rough wool. It smelled like horse and smoke and sage. He wrapped it around his shoulders. The rain kept falling. The thunder kept rolling. But under the overhang it was dry. Almost warm. Silas sat. His body felt loose. Empty. Like something had poured out of him and left a hollow place behind. The desert is patient, DeSoto said. She was looking at him with those flat, dark eyes. It does not expect perfection. Only effort. What if my effort ain't enough? Then tomorrow you try again. She said it like it was simple, like the trying was the point. Maybe it was. Silas pulled the medicine bundle from his vest pocket. The red cloth was soaked. He unwrapped it. The trap chain was still there, rusted, solid, real. He held it in his palm, felt the weight of it. 9 years ago, he'd pried open a trap, bled for it, rode away thinking he'd never see the consequences. But consequences didn't disappear. They just waited, patient, like the desert. And now they were here, in the form of a young man who called him grandfather, in the form of a woman who'd lost her son, in the form of 2 little girls he'd never met but who were alive because he'd stopped running for 10 minutes. The rain began to ease, and the pounding became a steady drumming, then a patter, then individual drops hitting stone. The clouds moved east. The setting sun broke through in the west. Light poured into the canyon, gold and orange and red. A rainbow arced across the sky. Then another, double. Perfect. DeSoto pointed. The desert speaks. What's it saying? Silas asked. That the storm ends. That light returns. She looked at him. That we survive. The wind died. The last of the rain stopped. Water dripped from the canyon rim. Steady. Musical. Naiche walked to the edge of the overhang, looked south, at the direction they needed to go, at the fort waiting beyond the horizon. We can reach it by morning, he said, if we ride through the night, and the men who carved that message, they will not move until daylight. By then, we will be at the fort. Silas stood. His legs were steady now. The hollow feeling in his chest had filled with something else. Not hope, not quite, but something close. What happens at the fort? He asked. You decide. Naichi said. Decide what? Whether you keep running. Naichi turned to face him. Or whether you stop. The question hung there, heavy, final. Before Silas could answer, a horse screamed. Not their horses, another one, coming from the south end of the canyon, where the message had been carved. Hoofbeats echoed off wet stone. Multiple horses, moving fast. Naichi's hand went to his knife. DeSoto's face went hard as limestone, and Silas realized with a cold certainty that settled in his gut like lead that the men hadn't waited for daylight after all. 3 riders. Not 7. 3. They came around the bend single file. The canyon was too narrow for anything else. Their horses picked through mud and standing water. Slow. Careful. Naiche pulled DeSoto back into shadow. The other 2 Apaches pressed against the canyon wall, invisible in the half-light. Silas stood at the edge of the overhang, visible, alone. His Henry rifle leaned against the rock behind him, 10 feet away. He didn't reach for it. The lead rider saw him, pulled up. The other 2 stopped behind him. Red beard, same man from yesterday. Up close his face was harder weathered and mean. His eyes were pale blue. They swept the canyon, counting shadows, looking for trouble. "You alone?" Redbeard called out. Silas's throat was dry. He swallowed. "Yeah. Saw tracks, multiple horses. Rain washed 'em out. Not all of 'em." Redbeard walked his horse closer. 20 feet now. His hand rested on the rifle across his saddle. "You see any Apaches through here?" Silas's pulse hammered in his ears. His hands wanted to shake, but he kept them still. Hooked his thumbs in his belt. Casual. Like this was normal conversation. "Nope." "You sure about that?" "Pretty sure." Redbeard studied him. His eyes were flat, weighing, calculating. "There's a message carved back there," he said. "Says $50 for Apache. Dead or alive?" "Saw it. And I don't see any Apaches." Redbeard's jaw tightened. Behind him, the other 2 men shifted. One had his hand on his pistol. The other was scanning the canyon walls. "Funny thing," Redbeard said. "We found a tobacco tin yesterday morning, right where them tracks were." Silas didn't blink. "Lost mine yesterday. Bull Durham. You find it?" "Maybe." "Keep it, then. Wasn't much left anyway." Redbeard walked his horse closer. 15 feet. 10. Close enough Silas could smell him whiskey and old sweat and something sour. "What's your name?" Redbeard asked. "Wade. Silas Wade." "Where you headed?" "Fort Huachuca." "Long way to travel alone." "I'm used to it." "You ex-Army?" "No." "Prospector?" "Was. Didn't work out." Redbeard circled his horse, looking at the overhang, at the deeper shadows where Nietzsche and the others hid. His horse's hooves sucked in the mud. "You got coffee?" Redbeard asked. Silas's stomach dropped. If they dismounted, if they came under the overhang, they'd see the other horses, the saddles, the tracks that rain hadn't washed away. "Fresh out," Silas said. "Thought I smelled some. That was this morning. Used the last grounds." Redbeard stopped circling, faced Silas straight on. His hand tightened on the rifle. "I think you're lying," he said. Silas's mouth was dry as sand. He couldn't swallow, couldn't speak. His hands started to move toward his gun, and he stopped them, forced them back to his belt. "Think what you want," he said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "But I'm headed to the fort. You can ride with me if you want, or you can keep looking for Apaches that ain't here. $50 says they are here. $50 don't mean nothing if you're wrong." Redbeard's face went dark. He started to raise the rifle. "You know who I am," Silas said. Fast, loud. The words came from somewhere he didn't recognize. "Silas Wade. Rode with the Tucson gang. Back in '74. Redbeard stopped. The rifle was halfway up. "Tucson gang's all dead or hanged." "Most of 'em. Yeah." Silas took a step forward. His legs were shaking, but he kept them moving. "I got out. Been running ever since. You know why?" Redbeard didn't answer. "Because I was there when 3 men got killed in a botched robbery outside Tucson. I ran before the law caught up." The lie tasted like copper. He pushed harder. "Federal marshal's been looking for me 10 years now. There's wanted posters, Tucson, Yuma, Tombstone, $200 on my head." Redbeard's eyes narrowed. "You're wanted." "Yeah. And if you turn me in, you get 200 instead of 50 for ghosts that probably ain't even here." Silas gestured at the empty canyon. "That's better arithmetic." Redbeard lowered the rifle. Not all the way. Just enough. His eyes were calculating now. Greedy. "You got proof? Ride to the fort with me. Ask the lieutenant. Check the posters they got." Silas's heart was slamming against his ribs. His shirt was soaked with sweat. "My face'll be there. Silas Wade, Tucson gang, 1874. Robbery and murder, though I didn't pull the trigger myself." He threw in that last detail. Made it sound real. Made it sound like something a guilty man would say. Redbeard looked at his companions, back at Silas. His face worked, thinking. $200 was 4 months' wages, maybe more, enough to make a man forget about tracking Apaches through canyons. "There ain't no Apaches here," Redbeard said finally. "That's what I told you." "And you're headed to the fort." "That's right." "Alone?" Silas nodded. His throat was so tight he couldn't speak. Redbeard backed his horse up, turned it. "We're going to the fort, too. We'll ride with you. Make sure you don't get lost." "Don't need an escort." "Wasn't askin'." Redbeard's eyes were cold. "You might be worth 200. Might be worth nothing. Either way, I'm gonna find out." He spurred his horse. The other two followed. They rode back the way they'd come. Their hoofbeats echoed and faded. Silas stood there. His legs gave out. He sat hard in the mud. His whole body was shaking. Naichi emerged from shadow. His face was unreadable. "That's stupid," he said. "Yeah." Silas's voice cracked. "It was, they take you to fort, they check, they find you lie." "I know. And then I'm in a fort full of soldiers. They can't do nothing to me there." Silas looked up at him. "But they can't come back here looking for you either. They think there's nothing to find." Naichi crouched. His eyes were dark, flat. "You give yourself for us. I gave him a better target, that's all." "Why?" Silas looked at his hands. They were covered in mud, still shaking. "Because I didn't know what else to do." DeSoto came out of shadow. She touched Silas's head. Her palm was warm. "You choose," she said. "Chose what?" "To stop running." The words landed heavy. True. 22 years he'd been running. Running from the law. Running from guilt. Running from himself. And in that moment, with Redbeard's rifle halfway raised and death maybe 30 seconds away, he'd stopped. He'd stood still. He'd lied. He'd traded his freedom for theirs. And for the first time in his life, he'd felt something other than fear. "We need leave," Naichi said, "before they come back." "They won't come back. Not tonight." "How you know?" "Because they think I'm worth more than you are." Silas stood. His legs held. Barely. "They'll wait at the fort. Watch the entrance. Make sure I don't slip past. And when you arrive, I'll tell truth, that I rode with Tucson gang. That I got out. That there's no warrant because I never killed anyone." Silas wiped his face. "They might believe me. Might not. But either way, you'll be long gone." Naichi looked at the canyon entrance, at the direction his family waited. "We ride north," he said. "Away from fort, away from you. That's smart. I not see you again." The finality of it hit Silas in the chest. He nodded. Couldn't speak. DeSoto wrapped her arms around him. Quick, tight. She smelled like sage and smoke and something else, sweetgrass maybe. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "You blood now," she said. "Kay, forever. I ain't worth it. That not for you decide." Naichi clasped his arm, forearm to forearm, the old scar pressed against new calluses. "You stop running," he said. "That what matters. For 10 minutes, 9 years ago, and again today. That enough." Naichi released his arm. "That more than enough." They saddled their horses, packed their gear, moved with the efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times. 1,000. Silas stayed under the overhang. Watching, his chest felt tight, empty, like something had been carved out and left a hollow space behind. When they were ready, Naichi mounted. The others followed. They rode to the canyon entrance, stopped, looked back. Silas raised his hand, just once. Naichi didn't return it, didn't need to. He turned his horse north and disappeared into the growing dark. DeSoto followed, then the other two. The sound of hooves faded, became nothing. Silas was alone again. He waited until full dark, then he saddled his sorrel, checked his gear, the Henry rifle, the medicine bundle in his vest pocket, The empty tobacco tin he'd found it after the rain. Kept it. He mounted, turned south. The fort was maybe 4 hours away. He'd arrive just before dawn. Redbeard and his men would be waiting. They'd check his story, find out he'd lied, find out there was no warrant, no $200, and then what he didn't know. But for the first time in 22 years, he wasn't running toward the answer. He was riding toward it. Straight. Direct. Like a man with nothing left to lose. Or maybe like a man who'd finally found something worth keeping. The canyon opened onto flat desert. Stars thick overhead. The ground still wet from rain. His sorrel's hooves made sucking sounds in the mud. He rode for an hour. 2. The stars wheeled overhead. The air cooled. His breath made fog. Dawn broke behind him. Gray first, then pink, then gold that spilled across the desert like honey. He crested a rise and saw it. Fort Huachuca. Adobe walls. Parade ground. Flags snapping in the morning wind. Smoke rising from cook fires. The smell of bacon and coffee carried on the wind. And something else. Something that made him pull up hard. Buffalo soldiers. Black cavalry. Dozens of them. Drilling on the parade ground. Their voices carried cadence calls, the rhythm of boots on hard earth. He'd heard about them, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, but he'd never seen them, never imagined them. They moved like water, precise, powerful, men who'd earned every inch of ground they stood on. And standing outside the fort gates waiting were 3 riders. Redbeard, his 2 companions, their rifles across their saddles, watching the road, watching for him. Silas's hand went to the medicine bundle in his vest pocket, felt the weight of it. The trap chain, the turquoise bead, the hawk feather, objects that meant nothing to anyone else. Everything to him. He could turn around. Right now. Ride east. Keep going. Disappear into territory so big a man could vanish for years. He'd done it before. But Nietzsche's words echoed in his head. You stop running. That what matters. Silas touched his heels to the sorrel's flanks. The horse moved forward, down the rise, toward the fort, toward the 3 men waiting, toward whatever came next. Redbeard saw him, stood in his stirrups, pointed. The fort gates opened. A lieutenant stepped out, young, Irish maybe. His uniform was crisp despite the heat. He looked at Redbeard, at Silas, back to Redbeard. This him, the lieutenant called out. Says his name, Silas Wade, Redbeard said. Says he rode with Tucson gang. Says there's a warrant. The lieutenant's face didn't change. And you believed him. I'm checkin'. The lieutenant gestured. 2 soldiers stepped forward, buffalo soldiers, big men. They carried rifles but held them loose, not threatening, just ready. Mr. Wade, the lieutenant said. Step down, please. Silas dismounted. His legs were stiff. He stood beside his horse, hands visible, away from his gun. The lieutenant walked closer. Studied Silas's face. You say you rode with Tucson gang. I did. When? 74. And there's a warrant. Silas looked him straight in the eye. No, sir, there ain't. Redbeard's face went purple. You lying piece of... I rode with them, Silas said. His voice was steady, clear. But I never killed anyone. Never fired a shot. I was just there, that's all. And when they got caught, I ran. He paused. I've been running ever since. The lieutenant's eyes were sharp, weighing. Why'd you tell these men there was a warrant? Because they were looking for Apaches, and I didn't want them to find any. Silence. The only sound was wind snapping the flag, boots on the parade ground, a horse shifting its weight. Were there Apaches? the lieutenant asked. Silas met his eyes. No, sir, there weren't. The lie tasted clean. True, the lieutenant looked at Redbeard. Sounds like you wasted your time. He lied. He told you there was a warrant. You believed him. That's on you. The lieutenant turned back to Silas. What are you doing at my fort, Mr. Wade? Looking for work. What kind? Any kind. Silas's throat was tight. I'm done running. Thought maybe... He stopped, started again. Thought maybe I could be useful. The lieutenant studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. We need civilian scouts. $25 a month plus rations. You know the country. Some of it. You track. I'm learning. Good enough. The lieutenant gestured to the fort. Report to quartermaster. He'll get you settled. Silas looked back at Redbeard. The man's face was twisted with rage, but he didn't move, didn't speak. The buffalo soldiers were too close, the fort walls too solid. Redbeard spat, jerked his horse's head around, rode away. His companions followed. Silas watched them go. His hands were shaking again, worse than before. He pressed them against his thighs. Mr. Wade, the lieutenant said. Silas turned. Those Apaches you didn't see, the lieutenant said quietly. They family. Silas's throat closed. He nodded once. The lieutenant's face didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Good. Family worth protecting. He gestured again. Welcome to Fort Huachuca. 6 months later, the desert turned gold. Fall in Arizona Territory meant the heat broke. Mornings came cool enough to see breath. The saguaros had long since dropped their white blooms. Desert marigolds covered the flats in waves of yellow. Silas guided the supply wagon through country he knew now. Every canyon, every dry wash, every stand of mesquite that meant water underground if you dug deep enough. 6 months of supply runs, of learning trails, of earning trust from the lieutenant, from the other scouts, from the buffalo soldiers who drilled each morning while he drank coffee and watched. The wagon bed carried flour sacks, coffee tins, ammunition crates, standard run from the fort to the mining camps 40 miles east. He made it twice a month, sometimes 3 times if the mines were buying. The pay was steady, $25 a month plus rations. He'd saved $18, kept it in a tobacco tin under his bunk. Didn't know what he was saving for. Just knew it felt good to have something that wasn't going toward whiskey or cards. He'd written his sister in Missouri. Used the fort's paper and ink. Paid a buffalo soldier named Collins to teach him how to spell the words he'd forgotten. The letter had been 3 sentences. Mary, I am alive. I am at Fort Huachuca, Arizona Territory. I am not running anymore. Silas. He didn't know if she'd get it. Didn't know if she'd write back. That was 6 weeks ago. No answer yet. Maybe there wouldn't be one. That was fine, too. The wagon rattled over stones. His sorrel gelding pulled steady in the traces. Good horse. Better fed now. Its coat had gone glossy. Smoke rose ahead. Thin. Gray. Coming from a canyon he knew. He wasn't supposed to stop. The lieutenant had been clear. Supply runs went straight through. No detours. No risks. Silas pulled the reins. The wagon stopped. He sat there, watching the smoke. It could be prospectors. Could be raiders. Could be a cooking fire from a dozen different sources. Could be family. He clicked his tongue. The sorrel moved forward. Off the trail, toward the smoke. The canyon opened into a bowl. 3 wickiups stood in afternoon shade. Cooking fire in the center. Rabbit on a spit. The smell made his mouth water. 2 little girls played near the fire. One had a doll made from corn husks. The other was drawing in the sand with a stick. They looked up when the wagon creaked into view. Didn't run. Didn't hide. Just watched. A woman emerged from one of the wickiups. Young, maybe 25, Her hair was long and black and braided with red cloth. She wore a calico skirt and deerskin leggings. Her hand moved to a knife at her belt, then stopped. She'd recognized him, or recognized something about him. Silas raised both hands, palms out, empty. "I'm looking for Naichi," he called out. The woman didn't answer. She spoke to the girls in Apache, fast and low. They ran to her. Tati stood behind her skirt, footsteps behind him. Silas didn't turn, didn't reach for his rifle, just sat there with his hands up. "You late," Naichi said. Silas's chest unclenched. He lowered his hands, turned. Naichi stood 20 feet back. He carried a mule deer over his shoulders. Blood dripped from its neck onto his shirt. His face was thinner than Silas remembered, harder, but his eyes were the same. "Didn't know I was expected," Silas said. "You always expected." Naichi walked past him, set the deer down by the fire, pulled his knife, started field dressing it with quick, efficient cuts. Silas climbed down from the wagon. His legs were stiff from sitting. He walked to the fire. The girls watched him with dark eyes. Didn't speak. The woman, Naichi's wife, had to be gestured to a flat rock near the fire. Silas sat. She handed him water in a gourd. He drank. It was cool and tasted like stone. "I brought coffee," Silas said. He gestured to the wagon. "Sugar, too, and cloth. Blue calico. Thought," he stopped, started again. "Thought maybe you could use it." Naiche looked up from the deer. Blood covered his hands to the wrists. "You still work for Army?" "Yeah." "They pay you $25 a month." "That good." Naichi went back to his work. The knife moved sure and clean, separating hide from meat. "You like it there?" Silas thought about that. The fort, the other scouts, 3 white men, one Apache named Chato who didn't talk much, the buffalo soldiers who drilled every morning while he drank coffee and watched, the lieutenant who asked questions but didn't judge the answers. "It's all right," he said. "Just all right. Better than runnin'." Naichi smiled. "Quick, there and gone." "Yes, that true." The youngest girl, the one with the cornhusk doll, walked closer to Silas. She was maybe 5. Her face was round. Her hair in 2 braids like her mother's. She stopped 3 feet away, stared at him. "Hello," Silas said. She didn't answer, just kept staring. Her sister hissed something in Apache. The little one ignored her. She took another step, then another, right up to Silas's knee. She held something out. A flower, desert marigold, yellow petals. The stem was bent. "For me?" Silas asked. She nodded, solemn. He took it. The petals were soft, fragile. They smelled like nothing, just dry and clean. "Thank you," he said. The girl smiled, then ran back to her sister. They whispered to each other, giggled, ran behind the wickiup. Silas looked at the flower in his palm. His throat was tight. "She never met you," Naichi's wife said. Her English was careful, precise. "But she knows who you are. How we tell stories." She gestured to Naichi, to herself, about man who stop, who bleed, who save her father before she born. Silas couldn't speak. He tucked the flower into his vest pocket. Next to the medicine bundle, Naichi finished with the deer, washed his hands in a water bucket, dried them on his pants, sat cross-legged across the fire from Silas. "DeSoto here," he said. "She will want see you. Where? Gather wood. She returns soon." They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Smoke rose straight up in the still air. The girls' voices floated from behind the wickiup, high and musical. "Your wife," Silas said. "What's her name?" "Yellowbird." "That's pretty." "Yes." Naichi poked the fire with a stick. Sparks lifted and died. "She nervous?" About meet you. Why? Because you should shy. Grandfather. That important. Silas looked at his hands. They were calloused from holding reins, from loading supply wagons, from work that wasn't running, wasn't hiding. I ain't much of a grandfather, he said. You only one she has. Naichi looked at his daughters, at the wickiup, at Yellowbird stirring something in a pot over the fire. My father dead, her father dead, you what we have. The words settled heavy. True. Footsteps behind him. Silas turned. Dasuda walked into camp carrying an armload of mesquite. She saw him. Stopped. Her face broke into a smile that made her look 20 years younger. She dropped the wood, walked to him, pulled him to his feet, wrapped her arms around him, held on. You came back, she said. Wasn't sure I'd find you. We not hard find. Not for family. She released him, stepped back, studied his face. You different. How? Weight lighter. Silas thought about that. About the hollow place in his chest that had been there for 22 years. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't crushing any more either. I got a long way to go yet, he said. We all do. DeSoto touched his cheek, quick, gentle. But you walk now, not run. She was right. He was walking. One foot in front of the other. No destination except the next day. The day after that. Yellowbird ladled food onto tin plates. Rabbit, corn cakes, wild onions roasted in coals. She handed one to Silas. He took it. The plate was warm in his hands. They ate. Nobody spoke. Just the sound of eating, the fire, the wind moving through juniper. When they finished, Silas walked to the wagon, pulled out a sack of coffee, 2 pounds of sugar wrapped in paper, 3 yards of blue calico cloth. He brought them back, set them by the fire. This for you, he said. Yellowbird touched the cloth. Her fingers were careful, reverent. She said something in Apache, soft. Hey-ha, she said. Then in English, thank you. Naichi stood. Walk with me. They walked to where Silas's sorrel stood in the traces. The horse was cropping at dry grass. Its ears flicked, relaxed. You leave soon, Naichi said. Have to get back before dark. Lieutenant be angry you stop. Maybe, maybe not. Silas checked the traces, tightened a buckle. If he asks, I'll tell him truth. And what that I saw smoke, that I checked it out, that it was just a family campin', nobody to worry about? Naichi nodded. Just family. That's right. They stood there. The sun was dropping. Long shadows stretched across the canyon floor. The air smelled like sage and wood smoke and fall. Debt repaid, Naichi said. Sheik is. Silas looked at him. There was never debt. There was. You paid Skeleton Canyon. We paid Desert. Naichi clasped his arm, forearm to forearm. Now we balanced? I don't feel balanced. You will. Naichi released his arm. In time. Silas climbed onto the wagon seat, gathered the reins. The sorrel lifted its head. Ready. Will I see you again? Silas asked. Yes. How do you know? Because you stop running. Naichi smiled. Men who stop running always find way home. Silas clicked his tongue. The wagon lurched forward. He guided it out of the canyon, back toward the trail, back toward the fort. He looked back once. Naichi stood at the canyon entrance, arm raised. Silas raised his own, then turned forward. The medicine bundle swung from the saddle horn. He'd tied it there this morning. Red cloth, bright against leather. The trap chain inside tapped against the turquoise bead with each step the horse took. The sun dropped lower. The sky turned orange, then pink, then purple. Stars began to push through. Silas thought about the desert, about the days he'd spent dying in it, about the people who'd found him, who'd saved him, who'd called him grandfather even though he'd done nothing to earn it except stop running for 10 minutes 9 years ago. Maybe that was the point. Maybe stopping was enough. Maybe the trying was what mattered. He thought about his brother. About Robert calling his name while fever burned him alive. About 22 years of carrying that weight. It was still there. It would always be there. But DeSoto had been right. He didn't have to carry it alone anymore. The fort appeared on the horizon. Torches lit. Smoke rising from cook fires. The flag snapping in the evening wind. Home, or something close to it. Something close. Silas touched the medicine bundle, felt the weight of it. The trap chain, the turquoise bead, the hawk feather, the desert marigold in his vest pocket. Objects that meant nothing to anyone else, everything to him. Maybe the desert hadn't been trying to kill him after all. Maybe it had been showing him something he'd needed to see for 22 years. How to stop running. How to stand still. How to let people see him and not turn away. How to live. The wagon rattled through the fort gates. The lieutenant was waiting, arms crossed, face hard. "You're late, Wade," he said. "Yes, sir." "I am." "You stopped." "Yes, sir." "Why?" Silas met his eyes. "Saw smoke. Checked it out. Just family campin'. Nothing to worry about." The lieutenant held his gaze, weighing, then he nodded. "Next time, don't stop." "Yes, sir." Silas drove the wagon to the supply shed, unhitched the sorrel, led it to the stable, fed it, brushed it down. The work felt good, simple, real. He walked to the barracks. His bunk was third from the door. He sat on it, pulled off his boots. His feet ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from honest work. He pulled the medicine bundle from his vest pocket, set it on the blanket, unwrapped it. The trap chain, the turquoise bead, the hawk feather, the desert marigold wilted now but still yellow. He wrapped them back up, tucked the bundle under his pillow, lay down. Through the window he could see stars, thick as spilled salt, the same stars DeSoto had pointed to, and the 7 sisters, watching over travelers, keeping them safe in the dark. Silas closed his eyes. Sleep came easy, no dreams. Just darkness and the sound of breathing and the knowledge that tomorrow he'd wake up. He'd do his work. He'd keep walking. Not toward anything, not away from anything, just forward, 1 foot in front of the other. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had always been enough. The desert was patient. It didn't expect perfection, only effort. And Silas Wade, ex-outlaw, ex-runner, scout for the United States Army, was finally ready to make the effort. There's something quiet about stories like this one. Not because everything gets fixed. Silas Wade didn't become a new man overnight, and Nietzsche's family still lives in the margins, still careful, still surviving. But something shifted. Something heavy that had been carried for 22 years found a place to rest, even if just for a moment. Many of us know what it feels like to run from something. Not always with our feet, sometimes just in our minds, our hearts. The way we hold ourselves distant from grace we think we don't deserve. Perhaps you've carried a brother's name, or a choice you made when you were 70, or the weight of not being there when someone called for you. Some of us have been running so long we forgot we were allowed to stop. This story doesn't tie up neat. Silas still has work to do. The desert is still hard. Nietzsche's daughters will grow up knowing what it means to hide. And maybe that's all right. Maybe we're allowed to let some things stay unresolved to walk forward without having all the answers. To accept that stopping is enough. Even if we don't feel worthy of it yet. Thank you for staying with Silas through the dust and the dark. for walking this trail with him.